Bill Fagan, welcome to the Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you, Marcus. Glad to be here.
I'm really excited to talk to you today. You are the president and CEO of the Aspire Group. So now I'm very eager to learn more about that and about yourself. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I have been with the Aspire Group for 14 years, and I was hired as the first employee. We are a sports consulting firm that helps brands and properties in a wide range of services, but all focused on fan service and driving revenue and attendance and improving the overall game day experience. And so that is where I've been the last 14 years, but I started my career in professional sports with internships, and while I was in undergraduate school at the University of Miami with the Orange Bowl committee, and then with the Miami Dolphins, and then my first real full-time opportunity came in ticketing in Phoenix with the Phoenix Suns NBA team, and was there for 3.5 years. Worked my way up through the ticketing department into corporate sales, and then my first leadership opportunity actually came in Canada and junior hockey with the Moncton Wildcats club as my first leadership opportunity, and then had an opportunity to return to the NBA, this time in Charlotte. The same person who hired me in Phoenix rehired me in Charlotte, and I was the inside sales manager there until a little over 14 years ago, when I got a call from the founders of the Aspire Group, and they were just launching their first ever property in outsourced ticketing, which had really never been done before. In this case, it was specifically in college athletics. And so the job was to set up the first ever, what we now call fan relationship management centers. And that was actually in Atlanta, where our headquarters is, and set it up on campus at Georgia Tech, and then build the model that could actually be replicated serving other sports properties, not just college, but pro, semi-pro, and any sports property that has tickets to sell and fans to service. And so since that time, we've worked with over 300 sports properties, and we've worked in 10 countries. But today, all of our employees are in America. We've got about 166 full-time employees. And then just most recently, a little over a month ago, we were acquired by Playfly Sports. And Playfly very much has a very similar culture and vision for where we've been going, but we've been independent up until now, and now we're part of a much bigger family and excited to serve at an even higher level.
That's amazing. And what a journey. And from being the first hire and now to being 150 plus employees. So you have really made the journey within the company. So how is that to start from the first employee up until, being the CEO as of now?
Well, I would say, first of all, that regardless of your position, title, the way that you go about your business, if the process doesn't change much, the work may change, but the process and the responsibilities may change. And so, one of the pillars of success, I believe, is being really focused on doing great at what you have in front of you today, because tomorrow's work could become a distraction. But to know certainly what your strategic plan and vision is, but not to be too distracted by that, because you got to make sure you're successful with what today's job is. And so, we never would have had a second client if we were not successful in the first relationship. And our industry is a very small network industry in the sense that it's very well connected. And so people talk, which is great for business, because when you do well, people will learn about that work. And then the flip side, if you're not performing or not doing well, people also hear about that. And so our growth is very much based on the referrals that we've received from our partners and past employees that have worked with us. And that has provided great opportunities. And so, as the company grew, my responsibilities grew. And, as in line with that, we've been able to promote many people internally. We've hired over 1,300 full-time employees now in that time period. And of course, many of them have moved on, but are still in the industry and doing great things. Many of them have been hired by our own partners, which is a very nice compliment. And they're still serving today, but that only happens if they're doing really good at their job. And so of those employees, we have actually promoted over 80 people who started with us at the entry level and have gone all the way up into managing their own property within our system. And that's unprecedented. I don't know any other organization that can say that they've done that in terms of just internal development and growth. So we've been able to accomplish that through heavy development and training, and serving the work that we have in front of us today. And then as new work becomes available, it creates more opportunities and more jobs.
That's great. And as you said, with the relationships, that's big, and it's a a tight industry, and everyone knows everyone. And if you do a good job, people will hear about it. And on the flip side, if you don't, they will hear about that as well. And I mean, that speaks a lot to yourself also, because you said that your manager in Phoenix hired you back later on, and also that now in your current position at the Aspire Group, they reached out to you, right? So that speaks a lot to yourself as well. So what qualities do you believe that you hold that the Aspire Group are looking for?
We look for, the acronym is WHOPPPP. Those are the 7 characteristics that we've found to be instilled in the most highly successful employees that work well in our culture. And that is work ethic, honesty, openness to learning, or being really coachable, a passion for both sports, and in our case, sports and sales, a productivity. So there's work to do. So can you deliver results? A positive attitude, bringing a positive attitude regardless of the situation. And then last but not least is potential for leadership, or do you have a desire to really grow and develop? And none of those characteristics are actually typically found on a resume, but however, if somebody has those, we can train them how to do a job. And so that's why we hire so many people it's their first full-time job in sports and entertainment, because if they show those characteristics, they have a really good chance of being considered for an opportunity. And then when we look at promotion eligibility and reward systems, we say, before we look at just the results, which should be very transparent and clear based on the goals that are set, we also say, are they delivering across all 7 of those characteristics still? So it's very, very much a holistic view of the performance of not just the results, but also the total person.
And you said before also that you have so many employees that have climbed internally, moved on to other opportunities, and that was partly because of internal training. So what type of training are you offer internally that you can see gives value to the employees?
So we have developed what we call the Raise Your Game Executive Development Program, and every employee has the opportunity to participate in it. And it starts on day 1. So if you're an entry-level employee as a ticket sales consultant, not only will we teach you how to sell tickets for that specific property, which is going to be unique training to the property, because they may have a specific sport or products that only they have. That would be the product knowledge. But the how to do it, the relationship building approach, the tactics, and how to have conversations, how to build relationships with fans, how to service fans, how to cross-sell a fan and learn what their hot buttons are and what's most important to them, so we can make their experience the best possible. And so that's what we do. That training is daily, it's weekly, and it's monthly, so it's ongoing. It may only be 5 minutes a day, and then at least once a month we do a more extended session, which is typically at least an hour on a specific topic. And the topic is not job specific, it's broader to the total sports business and life skills. So for example, we have a session that's on management versus leadership. So somebody will have an open conversation on what is the difference between managing and leadership. And one of the fundamental differences is that you don't need to have the title of manager to be a leader. And so even an entry-level employee can be a leader. They can be a leader in their work ethic or in their attitude. And that you could be a great producer and have great results, but if you're not doing it the right way, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're performing at a high level. And so we look at training the total person and training them not just for the job that they have now, but the job that they may aspire to get into 2 or 3 roles down the roll, whether that's with us or not, because many of our senior leadership team members have gone through the Disney Institute training program, and Disney is known, among other things, as the best customer service experience available in the globe. And so that they run workshops of how to do that. And the idea, one of the principles they share is around training your people. And it is, what if you train your people and they go and leave for another job tomorrow? Well, is that training all wasted? And we say no, because what if you don't train them and they are stagnant and they do not get better and they do not grow their skill set and they do not learn and are not open, and they stay. Now you've got an employee that is part of the team that is just a participant and not progressing. And so we do take time out of the day to train and to develop, because we are investing in those individuals, and those that are buying in, we put extra energy into it, because it's pretty easy to see who is embracing the training. And in those cases, we want to give them even more training opportunities, again, without taking them away from their core responsibilities, but instead enhancing it. So if somebody raises their hand and says, I'm interested in another function or another business unit and how they do their job, but I don't know a whole lot about it, we'll be happy to make an introduction to them to somebody that's in that division unit and say, you're interested in working in sponsorship sales, or you're interested in working in creative services or marketing. And so they can learn more about what's happening in that area before they ever actually would be formally applying for that position.
I love that. And I actually was going to ask you that with what if they leave? And it's a perfect answer, with what if they stay?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it happens. We've all been at workplaces where you can tell there's energy vampires, as the author John Gordon would call them, people that just suck the energy out of the room because they're simply not happy, right? And this happens in all phases of life, but positivity breeds more positivity. And when people are enjoying what they're doing every day, enjoying the people that they're working with, it makes it a whole lot easier for everybody involved. And the fans, the ones that we serve, they see it too.
Yeah.
There's a reason that they want to talk to their favorite representative in the organization. That's Marcus. Marcus is my guy. I'm going to go to Marcus for all of my questions and needs, even if it's not Marcus's job to tell me what's happening in a certain area. I'm still going to go to you, and that's the kind of relationship that we're seeking to achieve.
Nice. Talking about fans, you said that your employees are all in America, but it's a global company. Yep. So does the fan patterns or behaviors vary from different countries?
Good question. I remember when we first entered the UK, working with professional football clubs back 13 years ago now. And at that time, outbound sales was very unusual in the way that we had established it in America. And so when we were setting up our operations, we were meeting with some of the senior leaders at those teams. And while some were on board for the model of one-to-one fan service and sales, others said, you can't call fans during tea time. You can't. Our fans don't want to be bothered. That we can talk to them on match day. And the most amazing thing happened is, we made calls and we said, thank you so much for your support of the club. And those were our introductory calls. And not surprising to us, but surprising to some, was the fans embraced that. And they said, I've never received a call from the team before. I really appreciate it. and thank you so much. And so nice to know that I now have a name, a face, a personality inside the club, that I have a go-to person. And so in that sense, it's very much the same in America as it is in any other country where we've worked, where fans appreciate feeling the love when they have that outreach. I think what's different is the fandom is certainly different sport to sport and country to country. When you look at the fandom of, the EPL, there's a global fandom around, the biggest EPL clubs. Would probably equate to some of the fandom that we see with teams like the New York Yankees or the LA Lakers that have big brands and a very large global following. But we serve a lot of small properties that don't have a global audience. And one of the fundamental philosophies we have is that we serve fans at the local level, because most fans we know from our own research, they are a fan of their local club first. And so if you think about who the teams that you support, and when we do our work in college athletics, if I'm an alum of the University of Miami, and so I would say I'm a Miami fan, but they play within the Atlantic Coast Conference. Would I say I'm an ACC conference fan? Probably not. We don't affiliate our fandom with the conference or maybe even the league, but we do with our club and our team. And so it's no different. We're serving them at the local level. And so as we look at how do we serve fans, it's very much what's their local interest, and then how are we serving it to them locally. And if they happen to be a global fan, that's okay too, but they may not be able to attend games because they may not even live in that country, but they may identify as a fan. So in that sense, thinking more broadly, it's not just what are we doing on game day, it's how are we serving them, even if they are across the country or out of state or in a different area and they identify as a fan. So what type of tech and digital products can we serve them? What type of merchandise offering can we give them that is unique to them? Are there other products and services that are unique and or exclusive that that can bring them closer to the club, that don't require them to actually purchase a ticket or be there in person?
Love that. And on a very early episode on this podcast, I think it was episode 7 or something, I was talking to Jeff Wilson from Northern Ireland, and he's working a lot with fan engagement. And he is having his model like 4 squares. So it's a match day, and then at the stadium, not at the stadium, and then not match day, at the stadium, not at the stadium. And you need to cover all of these 4 boxes to, make a relationship with the fans, because maybe not everyone is able to come to the match day. And then how do you reach those? And what do you do when there's not a match day? So you just, covering all of those.
That's right. And all fans are not equal. Even all fans of the same club or team, because we have this similar philosophy, and we look at it as the fan life cycle. So think about now on one continuum, you've got age, and then on the continuum, you have the level of their fandom. And so from cradle to grave, or from baby to, retiree, what is their level of fandom? And then what are the products and services that we have available to them? Very similarly. So maybe for a child, they're not the one that is buying a ticket, but we know that children are forming their sports interests around 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. So how can we engage them? Is it a kids club? Do we have a kids club available to them? Do we have camps with the coaches that they could potentially participate in? Are there online programs that they can gain access to? And then the same thing at every kind of life cycle or age level, what products can we offer them? And in some cases, that market segmentation can tell us where to focus, because certain audiences are going to be more likely to actually spend money and support at a higher level than other audiences. But the way we speak to the different audiences in our digital communication, in our written and verbal communication, should be different.
You have also, or are focusing on diversification across sports and entertainment. And I mean, the fan base is very diverse. We have fans of, as you just mentioned, age, gender, nationalities, and so on and so forth. So how are you working to attract, everyone, that everyone is included and everyone can be a fan of a particular club?
Great question. It starts with research. So we go in with an open mind and to say, you know your fans best, but let us come in independently and validate what you believe to be your fans. So that's best done by just simply asking the fans. And if we could call every fan, we would, but that's relatively inefficient. So if we can do digital surveys, if we can do other types of focus groups with different audiences and stakeholders, then we start to create a more holistic view of people who identify as fans. And so we'll take all of those learnings, and Jeff Bezos from Amazon, if you read his book, he talks about bringing the customer's voice to the table. And at every board meeting, they would leave one empty seat. And it was a reminder that that's the customer. And what would the customer say? Very similar to that philosophy. It's before we make any assumptions about what we think the fan wants, let's ask them. And so let's go ask them up front and which audiences feel underserved. And then let's see if we can serve them better. And so it's not a one size fits all approach. It is a very segmented and targeted approach, and figuring out where is the maximum return on our energy, because we may not realistically be able to create something for every fan per se, but can we at least identify what those fan audiences and segments are, so then we can engage them and give them what they think they want. And if there's a product that's not available that they may want because that better fits their lifestyle and their interest, that's where data can back it up and say, hey, maybe we should create a more flexible ticket plan, or maybe we should create a new hospitality option that includes food and drink because that's what fans want. Maybe we should have a post-game event because fans love to stick around after the game and hang out. And if we don't have those things, then we're missing opportunities.
I spoke to I've spoken to Victoria Kojivina from she's in One Football, and now now she's in One Football, and they were saying also the offering to like women's fan to like do oat milk lattes or just something small that just feel that the fan can feel like they are included. So many small things that you can do to attract a larger audience.
Yeah, and there's no harm in trialing and testing.
Yeah.
We try things and they don't work, and that's okay. But if you don't try it, you'll never know. And so if it's a relatively low risk to test something, then why not? And you'll be surprised what can work, and the fans will tell you. That's the great thing. And so on the back end, we like to measure the fan feedback, and we do a lot of post-game or post-event surveys as well to say, what was your level of satisfaction on a variety of metrics around their experience? And then we use that feedback to help improve the experience going into future events. So if it's game 1 or game 2 of the season, and we have 10 or 20 games at home this year, we can use that information 2 games in to make adjustments for game 3 and beyond, and not have to wait all the way till next season. Because if somebody had a bad experience at game 2, and we don't know about it, or we don't do anything about it, more importantly, and it's something in our control, and I'm not talking about wins and losses, I'm talking about the fan experience side, then it's on us, and we shouldn't be surprised if they don't come back. But if we can do something about it and then go back and close the feedback loop and say, Marcus, you told us that the seats in your section are unstable, or the bathrooms were dirty, or something that we can control, and then we can go fix that and then report back that we have fixed that for you. And Marcus, next time you come out, you're going to have a much better experience because we've listened to you, we heard you, and we're going to make it better for you.
What's the importance of technology when it comes to fan engagement?
Yeah, tech and digital are increasingly important to the fan experience, and that applies to both in venue on game day and especially non-game day or outside of the venue. So how we are engaging with fans is important. And so one of the questions we like to ask is to each fan, how do you prefer to receive information? And where do you get your information today? We did a study with a major university athletic program who had great student attendance for football, but for basketball, it was very poor. Yet the product, in terms of what was happening in terms of performance, was actually very high in both sports. So they had us go speak to their students and say, and learn exactly, why is it that you attend every home football game, but you only barely attend many basketball games? And we asked them, among other things, how do you receive your information about when the next home games are for basketball? And they said, well, we don't know when they are, because the and when we do go, the game times are all over the place. It's inconsistent. The days of the week are inconsistent. And so unlike football, which has this generally the same day of the week every week during the season, it's very predictable. Basketball does not. So they have different days of the week and different times of day. And so even just understanding when the games were was a challenge. And then furthermore, it was a bigger time commitment. They told us 18 games is a big commitment compared to 6 or 7 games. I can budget for 6. I can't budget for 18 in terms of my time. I'm a student. I have a lot of other competing priorities. And so we listened to that and said, okay, we understand 18 is a lot. What if we told you these are the top 4 or 6 games that we want to have a sold out atmosphere, because we know the fans have a better experience when student section is full, when the band is playing, and therefore a crowd will attract a crowd.
Mm.
And so that came out in the feedback. It said, let's pick the days of the week that work best for students. And then they told us those days. And then they said, we asked them, what else would make it a great experience besides the game? They said, well, we really wish we could have our favorite food from the town, because we know when we go to the basketball games, we're stuck with the concession food, and we don't want the hot dogs and hamburgers and pizza that are already there. We'd rather have the local pizza place that's our favorite place that's not in the arena, and we want the Mexican food that's available but not in the arena. So what we did is we said, why wouldn't we have a pre-game tailgate outside of the venue that has their favorite Mexican, catered by the favorite local Mexican food restaurant, that's included in the ticket, and then at the end of the game have pizza available for students that stay the whole game from their favorite pizza place. It doesn't conflict with what's happening inside the venue, but gives them an extra reason to be there, and other incentives. And so when we talk about doing a giveaway, t-shirts are very popular with students, but not all students. Some students say, well, I have enough t-shirts. I'd be really interested in a big prize. And so what if we had a flat screen TV giveaway? Or what if we had a free iPhone giveaway? And so those are the things that are interested in them. It's a better opportunity to invest in those prizes, and if that's what's going to drive their participation and attendance.
Really interesting. And the food aspect was something that I spoke to Lou DePauli a lot about, and they were working a lot with that in City Field to offer that people could come there for the major reason was maybe not the sport. That was to go to grab this type of food or to have this great experience, and then it was a bonus to also watch the game. So they really invested on the food aspect of the fandom.
So true.
Really good. I read in an article, and I'm sorry because I don't remember exactly which one it was, so I'm citing it here and I cannot give credit. But it's on the topic of leadership, and it said, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Fagan showed up for his employees and partners, spearheading initiatives to maximize staff retention, leading by example with a proactive approach to social justice, and taking as much time as possible to provide one-on-one guidance and engagement with all the employees. So talking about leadership, as we did before, I mean, in a tough situation like the COVID pandemic was, and taking the health aspect to the side, risk of losing your job and so many other factors. So this really speaks to your leadership. So I would just like to get your thoughts on this time and how you handled it.
Yeah, a very vivid period in all of our lives in recent, and probably the most lonely period in our lives, where we're physically isolated. And for many of our employees, the nature of them being in their 20s in terms of their age, and many of them living alone. Maybe they have a pet, maybe they have roommates, maybe they have a partner, but many of them didn't. And they're remote not only from friends, but also family. And especially when there was no travel, we acknowledged that. And we wanted to especially lean in and let them know that they have a family, they have a network here. The term family is thrown around a lot. I believe, and probably overused, but in that period, it truly was so important. And when we talk about family, we use the acronym family that spells out forget about me, I love you. And it's to say it is all about the team, it's all about us supporting each other and knowing that, even in times where there's uncertainty, and in that case, way beyond the uncertainty of just, am I going to have work to do, or are there going to be tickets to sell or fans to serve? It was, what's going to happen next? And being the steadying force in that instance was to over communicate. So we did a lot of video calls, a lot of Zoom meetings, video meetings, to be present to our employees. And in that case, it wasn't just training on job job training, but also it was educating and having open conversations around what was happening around us in the world, around social justice, around what's happening in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, and making sure that all of our employees felt like they had a voice. And we would bring in guest speakers to speak about their own experiences. We would talk about current events in a safe environment, and it was optional. We would not require these, but we wanted to provide as many opportunities to have safe conversations, to have people know that they had groups that they could go to, internal resource groups that they could lean on, and peers that they could lean on. And then the last part was, since we couldn't do in-person events, we hosted dedicated virtual forums that were very much participatory, as opposed to front of the room classroom style speaking from leadership. So we would participate as active participants, but it's more about initiating the conversation and letting cross dialogue happen over video and over calls, so that people could really find connections. And ultimately, that resulted us being able to save, create an environment that was very much a supportive culture, even when there was perhaps less work to do. At the same time, we were able to save a lot of jobs because we had people that cared, and that care showed when in the work that they were doing became much more meaningful. And because the nature of our employees is, most of them are on the phones or engaging with fans every day. And so we did care calls, meaning we would call fans, and instead of just saying thank you, we would just say, Marcus, how are you doing? Checking in on you. I know I'm here to serve you as a representative of the team, but I'm also just checking in on you, and seeing how you're doing, seeing if there's anything that we can do for you as part of the club. And to the extent that we had events that we could invite them to, like a chalk talk with the coach that we may have coordinated, that they could be invited to as a season ticket member. It was an extra reason to reach out, but the call started with care first.
I love that. That's amazing. And I mean, they must have been super appreciative about that, right?
It showed when we did our annual employee survey, and when we did our pulse surveys to ask, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And do you feel like you're heard? Do you feel, are your needs being met? And while we couldn't meet all needs, we could hopefully at least give them a safe place to be. And it showed in the feedback that it was appreciated. And I think it certainly helped. And more than anything, they're happy to have a job, but also have a job in a place where they felt very well supported.
I'm sure. You like acronyms, it seems.
Yeah.
With the WOP and now with the family. Is that something that you like to do, to play around with the words like this?
Yes, I think it's very useful for, especially for me. I'll speak to it and say, my memory is not perfect, and I don't have a photographic memory, but if it's an extra tool to speak to something that's really valuable and really important. And I find it's easier to retain information if you have acronyms to, and sometimes it can become a little bit of an alphabet soup if you have too many, but if you're using the same ones consistently, then over time they can become really meaningful.
Because I've also read that you have said that, for example, you're superstitious about alarms. It needs to be set to odd numbers. So, I mean, do you have these small things with words, numbers, and they need to be in a specific way? And
It's very much about process, and it may come across a little peculiar, but for me, it's a pattern of routine I find is really helpful. And if you have a routine, it's to use Steve Jobs as an example. He would wear the same outfit every day, and it wasn't literally the same clothes. It was one less decision for him to make each day, and that would free him up over the course of time with hours and hours of extra time to do more meaningful things. And I think some of the things I take away from that is, what are the things that you can automate or make just consistent in your everyday patterns and behaviors, so that they make them easier for you to not only memorize, but then also to share, to speak to, and then also to bring people together. And so that's any ways that I can find. It's not a shortcut or some efficiency by simplifying things that maybe are a little more complicated, I find helpful.
I understand. So how is your daily routine, like an regular day?
Yeah, typical day, I wake up earlier than most, and then
When
I
is
will
early?
go 5 a.m. And then actually it's more like 5:07 with a backup alarm at 5:09. And then
Odd numbers.
yeah, and then that gives me the opportunity to think. And then I'll jump out and I'll be at the gym by 6, and I go to the same group workout every day, Monday through Friday. And then that gets out and I shower at the gym, so I don't have to go home. And then I'll go. It's actually on the way to the office. I'll go to the office, and then typically in the office by 7:45, 8 a.m. And that allows me to have typically about 30 to 45 minutes before most people have started their days, where I can really think and organize that day's essential tasks. And then around 8:39 is when the physical office starts to get busier and the distractions really start. That's when the emails digitally start to come in heavier, as well as everything else. And so from that point forward, my day's oftentimes filled up with dedicated meetings and or presentations, both internal and external, and serving all the key stakeholders, including one-on-ones with direct reports, meetings with specific business units to drive the business and measure the business, and then meetings with our partners, and training embedded in elements of these things. We have ongoing communication with both standing meetings as well as partner meetings. And then typically at the end of the day, before I leave for the day, I will document my wins and then what are my need to do's. So it's very unusual to get through your entire to-do list in a day, and that's okay. But before the day ends and before I leave for tomorrow, I find that if I don't start to organize tomorrow, it will become distracting for me in the evenings and overnight. And so it actually helps me sleep better if I organize my thoughts and plans for the next day at the end of today. So I'll make that the priority list. And I will look back and say, what did I actually accomplish? What did I complete? So I can celebrate that and feel that I did get something done today. At the same time, if there are works in progress, make sure that figure out where those are, and anything new that came in, where does that fit in the priority list so you can organize the next day. The challenge is if there's travel. So this week I've been on the road all week. This is my first day back in the office. It's a bit of an unusual week in that regard, but You just have to adjust. And so on a travel, and when I'm traveling, the day is going to look different. I'll still try to start and finish the day very similarly, but the middle of the day is probably different, driven by whatever the business needs are on that travel.
I see. So you start the day with a workout and you finish with journaling, more or less.
Correct.
Yeah. Any meditation?
I'm very interested in meditation, but I can't say that I've practiced it regularly, and I'm open to learning.
I'm not either, but I've heard on different podcasts and people talking about it, and they swear by it. They say it's the best. So it's just been top of mind lately. That's why I asked.
I appreciate you bringing that up. It's a good reminder for me. Thank you.
You're welcome. The last topic that I have is mentorship. And I mean, we have kind of spoken about it. I read before during the COVID and how or leadership or mentorship. And I assume that you were kind of a mentor for the people in your team as well. But what is the power of mentorship according to you?
I believe that feedback is a gift, first of all. And whether it's from a mentor or a boss or a peer for that matter, or a subordinate, it's a gift. So mentorship is two directions, first of all. And it doesn't have anything to do with experience or title. You could be mentored by someone who is much younger than you or much more experienced than you, either way. But I think doing it in a purposeful way is also important. I've been fortunate, certainly in my career, that my leaders, my direct reports, have also often, almost always, been mentors as well, and in a way that has been either semi-formal or formal. So we would have one-on-ones where we talk about business issues. Have one-on-ones where we talk about more professional development and growth. And I think that they're both important. Very similarly, I believe in paying that forward to others that aspire to take the next step. A mentor can and should oftentimes also be different than your boss, though, because having a third-party perspective that can look from the side and say, here's what I see. I don't have a stake in the game, but based on my observations, here's what I'm see. Here's what I would recommend. I was fortunate in grad school when I was doing my MBA at Emory. They provided professional coaches, and one of those coaches sat with me, and she was great. She asked me about my typical day and where I spend my time, and at the time, this was years ago, she said, well, you say you want to become more strategic and more data driven, but when you talk about your typical week, you're not dedicating any time to those activities. So how are you going to improve? So it took that third party perspective to say, you say one thing, but your actions actually show you that you're putting your energy elsewhere. And so the great takeaway for me coming out of that program and out of that coaching was dedicate time to those things. So whether, in your example, whether it's meditation that can fuel you, or if it's a specific task or activity that you don't naturally do, it's probably out of your comfort zone, but dedicating time to it and literally putting it on the calendar, for me, I find that's very helpful. And then spending time to find and seek out people who are really good at that, or people that just simply have more information about that area of interest than you do. And so that's my definition of how to navigate and seek out mentors, is people that are probably different from you, that have a different perspective. If it's a yes person that just is a big cheerleader of yours, you're probably not going to learn much. If it's a mentor or a mentee relationship, that would be a cheerleading relationship, and those are valuable. But a good mentor can be a guide. They're non-judgmental, but they can be honest with you, and they can tell you. They can tell you if when they know something or they have a recommendation. They can also say, I don't have thoughts around that, or I don't have experience in that area. And so I think there's a lot of value to that, and particularly in looping it back to where we serve every day, which is serving the fans.
Yeah.
I think about the next generations of fans that are here and to come in the future. You and I, Marcus, for every year that passes, we're going to become less and less like those future generations in terms of our needs, our interests. And so I believe very firmly that we should lean into our youngest and newest employees, regardless of age, and ask them what they are experiencing, what types of activities are they involved in, what do they do in their spare time, what drives their interests. And because invariably that's going to help us understand the next generation of sports fans. And are we serving them with similar opportunities to show their fandom at our property in the way that they want to be served? And that is something we can learn from those other generations. And the same could apply to generations before ours. Do we have products and services that are going to speak to them? And so, back to data, back to listening, and then, based on all of that information, making decisions that are more informed. So it can come through formal feedback or informal feedback.
Love that. And you really tied it all together here in the end, everything we have spoken about. Love it. Is there something I haven't asked you yet that you want to mention?
I believe that there are going to be more opportunities for people that want to work in this industry. There's going to be more and more opportunities. I think there are going to be more challenges, which means opportunities. And I think those that are embracing the ambiguity of not knowing what those opportunities and challenges are going to be, but can be adaptable, that can be open, and those that can be more of a triple threat, meaning having multiple skill sets, not just being a specialist, but growing skill sets in various areas while still performing at your current job. Those are the type of people that are going to become increasingly valuable in the marketplace, increasingly valuable to employers, and better serving of the future fan, and creating forever fans, which is what we go to work every day to do, is identify future fans and create fans for life.
The last question that I ask everyone is, if you can choose someone from your network who could be a good guest on this podcast, who would you recommend?
Marcus, I think Jeff Iannello, if you've heard that name, he works with SeatGeek, fast growing ticket provider and technology provider in the ticketing space. They are building something very big and innovative. I think that's in his experience, having grown and worked through the industry. I always enjoy speaking with him about what's happening in both the tech and digital space, as well as kind of where the industry is going to make things more fan friendly. And then Charles O'Donnell, who works in the esports space, and particularly within the collegiate esports space. It's fascinating to see what's happening in that arena as well, because it's a non-traditional sport environment, yet and with a much different demographic that is, I think, here to stay and going to continue to evolve. So those are some of the emerging areas and people that I think really have an interesting perspective on what's happening in the industry.
Really great suggestions. Thank you. Bill Fagan, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and inspiring us and taking the time to speak to me today on Sports Management Podcast.
Grateful, Marcus. Nice speaking with you.